Hello. Hi. It's positive reinforcement time with your host, Jonathan. Reinforce Larson. What's up, everyone? Hello. It's hello. It's a new week at the Overwatch League. We're back. It's time for week 4. We've done a month of the Overwatch League. How amazing is that? We've done 1 month out of like 7 or some shit. I don't know exactly. I haven't looked up. But we did 1 month. We're back. We're back, baby. How have you guys adjusted? Have you changed your daily routines to make sure you can fit all of these games in? Have you lost connection with your friends because you take Sunday and Saturday out to watch your Overwatch League? Take care of yourselves, Overwatch League fans. Get ready. Put the seatbelt on or whatever chair you're sitting in. I mean, if you're in a chair that has a seatbelt, I just pray for your sake that you've actually put on the seatbelt because I think it's there for a reason. So if you're in a chair that's a seatbelt on it, make sure you put it on. If you don't have a seatbelt near you, you're probably fine. But get ready some kind of way. If your wrists hurt, put on some wrist thing that helps it out. I'm just trying to look out for you guys. I'm just trying to look out for my podcast listeners because without you, I'd just be talking to myself in my closet. So take care of your wrists, put on the seatbelts because we got more Overwatch coming this year, and I don't want you guys to get injured. So get ready. Get ready. This is just the start of the Overwatch League and this podcast. Just the start of this podcast. If I still do this podcast in August or something, I'll be surprised myself. I never even thought I'd have a podcast, but here we are. So get ready because we're popping off. We're popping off, dude. We're popping off. We're doing a podcast full time, which is pretty cool, I suppose. We're not actually doing it full time, but I am doing a podcast. So now, when I've explained to you that I'm doing a podcast for 2 minutes, let's actually talk about what's going on. Episode 4. I don't even know. I've lost count already. There's so many episodes already. But yeah, sure. It's like episode 4. Is it? No, it's like episode 5. Who knows? It's an episode of the Positive Reinforcement Podcast, the podcast where I give the Overwatch community a treat. Welcome to another episode of the Positive Reinforcement. We're heading into week 4 of stage 1. There's a lot of stage playoff implications on the line this week, with a lot of top teams looking to close it out. New York Excelsior has already solidified their place in the stage playoffs, and Valiant are out. Rest in pepperonis. Los Angeles Valiant, rest in pepperonis. And I just like to say that before I move on to this week's schedule, that it came up in a meeting we had today at the Overwatch League office. And you'll probably hear the rest of Talent or something say it this week before the games or whatever. But it's actually pretty amazing because even though the Los Angeles Valiant are out of Stage 1 playoffs contention, because we have reduced the amount of games in a single season, if they just start experimenting with their lineup, if they just start mixing things up, trying to figure shit out for Stage 2, if they just lose their next 2 games because they're fucking around, quite honestly, the odds for them getting back to a .500 record, winning 50%, losing 50% of the games, like getting back to a proper record for stay or like season playoffs might turn out to be quite difficult because you just lost for the first quarter of the season. So even though the Los Angeles Valiant are out of the Stage 1 playoffs, they have a lot of important games coming up this week. They're playing the Philadelphia Fusion, who they, they look better than average. Let's put it that way. Apparently, this is a team that a lot of people have strong feelings about. So I'll just say that they're looking better than average. And then they're playing the Houston Outlaws, who, in my opinion, is a bit overlooked. Sure, they're not a top team. They're probably below average. But if the Houston Outlaws can start racking up a few wins, they are actually looking pretty good if you're looking at their past games. They haven't really beaten anyone impressive as of yet, but they did get a few wins. I think the most notable one was the one against the Hangzhou Spark. They also beat the Florida Mayhem, although that was pretty close. I'm double checking the schedule as we speak. They obviously got crushed by the New York Excelsior, but if we disregard that game, they lost to Boston Uprising in week one, went to all 5 maps, and quite honestly, they could have won that game. It went to map 5 against the Toronto Defiant, who are looking really good. To be fair, that was Defiant without Nico. But still, I feel like if you look at their match results overall, this is a Houston Outlaws team that if they go on a like 2-3 match win streak, they might even edge into my top 10 power rankings. Let's see what other matchups. They have Atlanta Rain in week 5. That's next week. That might prove like become really difficult for them. But I mean, if they go to map 5 against Atlanta and then in stage 2 in week 1, they're playing. They're playing. Who are they playing in week 1? Wait, they're not even. Am I blind? They're not even playing in week 1 of stage 2. What? Is that actually possible? All teams. Houston Outlaws. Wow, they don't even play week 1 of stage 2, so they got like a 3-4 week break. Oh, and then they play Vancouver Titans in week 2. Never mind. Disregard everything I said. Doesn't matter. They're never breaking my top 10 power rankings. You are lost. You are lost. You will never get there. I'm sorry, Houston Outlaws. See you in stage 4. Okay, so with that little rant out of the way, let's jump into this week's schedule. Starting out with Thursday, March 7th. And I actually brought my harmonica today, so let's play a bit of a tune. Okay, hold up. I'm warming up. Okay, never mind. Fuck it. I can't play an instrument. I'm sorry. Okay, very frustrating. Choking on my podcast trying to play an instrument. Sad. Sad. I'll promise I'll get better. Very frustrating. Anyway, moving on to this week's schedule. We're already 7 minutes in, and I've just been ranting. Feels good, man. That's what you guys like anyway. I know you types. I know you types. You just like ranting anyway. So that's what I'm doing here on the Positive Reinforcement podcast. Anyway, let's move into Thursday, March 7th, as I almost dropped my mic. I don't know if that made any noise. Atlanta Rain versus the LA Gladiators. We thought this would be a really good game, but apparently the Los Angeles Gladiators suck ass. So, unlucky. Maybe if the Los Angeles Gladiators, I'm going to shorten that to Gladiators moving on. If they could actually get their teamwork together, this could become a pretty good matchup because, as we've said so many times in the past, like I said on my previous episode of Positive Reinforcement, the Gladiators, they have the individual skill necessary. They just don't have the teamwork. And we've seen in the past how their tank line and their support line, they're so out of sync. And it's honestly quite frustrating to watch. So if they suddenly manage to fix that and get themselves together, if DK doesn't have horrible graviton efficiency, I looked up the stats this week, or confidential super mega stats at the Overwatch League. And I think that DK, don't quote me on this because I don't have them in front of me. I think he's like top 5. No, it's probably more like top 8. Top 8 all stars in the league in major categories, except for graviton surge efficiency, which he's ranked number 17th at. So that just tells you how poor the actual follow-up is on ultimates. And I'm looking at DK. He rarely gets his graviton surges eaten by the enemy diva. He just gets them out, captures 3-4 members, quite honestly, really good grabs, but he just does it so randomly that his team can't really capitalize on it, and they just look lost. And so if they start actually getting value from a lot of these ultimates, this is a Gladiators team that is going to look scary. So I'm hoping that at some point this Gladiators team is actually going to get it together, because I've hyped them up already, and then they just looked horrible last week. And so I'm really hoping that they show some kind of signs of life against Atlanta, and then they play Guangzhou Charge later this week. And then if they perform well in both of those matchups, I think we could start getting excited about the Gladiators, because it's not a problem of individual skill. The teamwork just isn't there, and too many members of the team is feeding. So I'm still looking out for this matchup. It could be a great one. Atlanta, obviously, looking really good. I just wanted to find some consistency because a lot of members on this Atlanta Rain team, they have looked really inconsistent. I'm looking at Poco specifically, Pokpo specifically, has been really inconsistent on the Reinhardt. So I know he had a fantastic game against the Paris Eternal last week, but going into this week, I'd like to see some more consistency from Pokpo on the main tank role. And then in week 5, maybe we can start slowing down on the Atlanta train, or even consider them like a top 3 team in the league. That would be quite something, depending on how Shock do this week as well, of course. Next up, we got the Los Angeles Valiant taking on the Philadelphia Fusion. Already mentioned this one a bit. I do think Philadelphia Fusion will end up taking this one. And I just want to mention it because of my power rankings I released this week. I got a lot of feedback or replies on that one. I don't really care. I thoroughly thought out my power rankings. And if you criticize it and if you don't agree, well, then I'm sorry. But I really thought this one through. I took a lot of results into consideration and also my eye test and made a judgment based on my own, what was the word I'm looking for? My own criteria, essentially. And so I do think that Philadelphia Fusion, they probably are a top 5 team in the league when it comes to my power ranking. But the results just aren't there for me, and I'm not willing to go on a limb and just assume that they are better. A lot of people bring up the boombox excuse. I'm just gonna call it excuse. It's 10 p.m. I woke up early. I'm pretty tired. It's not really an excuse, but it's an argument. It's an argument. The boombox argument that he was out, they had to fill in with Elk. That's also one of the reasons why they lost to Dallas Fuel. And I can see that. I can see that. I don't think that Philadelphia Fusion loses to the Dallas Fuel if Boombox actually plays that game. But the true story is that Dallas Fuel won that game 3-1. Had he gone to map 5, would have been different. Philadelphia would have been above Dallas Fuel in my power ranking. But the fact of the matter is, Philadelphia Fusion lost to the Florida Mayhem 2-1, and that just shouldn't happen. I don't care if Elk is on flex support. He can Discord or people. He can call who he's shooting at. He can follow others' calls. I don't think that the boo box argument holds that much weight that you can still consider them that much of a top team. I don't think the argument holds weight, and I'd rather just put more emphasis on the actual results, which are they lost to Florida Mayhem, they lost to the Dallas Fuel, and then they had borderline a close game against the Washington Justice. They did lose Ilios. I can't remember exactly how the rest of the game went, but uh, did go to Sideshow's stream the other day, and when he recalled the game, he said it was fairly close, so I trust him on that. Philadelphia played a close game with the Washington Justice, and I just, in my gut, I thought that Dallas Fuel, this is a team to me that is being a bit overlooked. And let me get to that, because a lot of people said, hey, you're just a Dallas Fuel fan, you're overrating them. That's not true. I have my arguments, and I've thought this through thoroughly before I actually put it on paper. So don't give me that irrational bullshit. I actually thought this through, and I'm not willing to give Philadelphia Fusion a top 5, top 6 power ranking when they lost to Florida Mayhem. It looked close against the Washington Justice, and then they actually lost to Dallas Fuel, which in turn I ranked above them. So Dallas Fuel, why did I put them at number 6? Fuck it, we might as well go there. We might as well go there. Screw the schedule. The reason why I put Dallas Fuel at number 6 is quite honestly, Dallas Fuel, they don't deserve to be at number 6. Fans themselves, they're surprised. Why are we even number 6? And I'm telling you right now, Dallas Fuel, you probably don't even deserve to be number 6. But the fact of the matter is that there's so many awful teams in this meta specifically that have looked so inconsistent. And then you have Dallas Fuel, who actually showed some consistency. Sure, at times, especially week 1, AKM wasn't in the lineup, and instead they played Effect, and they didn't look as good. They got 2 losses against the Guangzhou Charge and against the was the top 3 team. It was not New York. Who was it? God damn it! I have to go back and look. They lost to they lost to the San Francisco Shock. And so Dallas Fuel have only recorded losses against teams that are above them in the power ranking. Now they have AKM in. They look a lot better with AKM the past couple of games. Sure, it was pretty close against the Shanghai Dragons. I admit it looked pretty close, but still the wins are there for my opinion, and I don't put too much negative consequence, I'm just fucking rambling English words here. I don't even know what I'm saying. Their losses have actually, like, their actually losses don't even matter to me because they lost to the San Francisco Shock and they lost to the Guangzhou Charge, which both to me look really good. And it was with affecting the lineup, which they looked a lot worse with. And so now AKM is back. OG looks a lot better. And so I think Dallas Fuel, they cleared their eye test. They beat the Philadelphia Fusion. Already told you about that one. And so, in my opinion, with Hangzhou Spark sucking ass and being inconsistent, the Los Angeles Gladiators, quite honestly, disappointing last week as well, recording a bunch of losses. Paris Eternal got 4-0'd by Atlanta Reign, and they only had some wins that I don't even consider specifically relevant. They beat the London Spitfire in like a 2 or it was like 3-2 or a 2-1 win or whatever. But that was with Birdring in the lineup. That was when London Spitfire was ass. And then they beat the Los Angeles Gladiators, who also looked awful. And so Paris Eternal, I don't even rate them that highly because they don't have any wins on their record, which are actually notable. And so Dallas Fuel is the only team here that is sort of a consistent. They look better every match since they put AKM in. And OG is improving, Anko is sick. And so to me, Dallas Fuel show the consistency and they have the wins. They have the wins record and they look better with the eye test every game. And so that, coupled with the fact that a lot of teams are just starting to suck and showing consistency, that's why they ended up at 6, okay? It's not about Dallas Fuel deserving to be 6, it's that other teams don't deserve to be 6, and that's why I put them there. Rant over. God damn it. Anyway, moving on with a lot less anger. Toronto Defiant, Chengdu Hunters. We'll see some summer gameplay. Chengdu Hunters will lose. Game over. Friday, March 9th. Moving on to the Friday. Oh, it's actually 8th. God damn it. Friday, March 8th. There you go. Paris Eternal versus the Vancouver Titans. Now, this is going to be a sick game, ladies and gentlemen. This is going to be a really good game if Paris Eternal gets their shit figured out. Vancouver Titans, of course, top 2 team in the league. I don't really have a strong argument for either New York Excelsior or Vancouver Titans. Vancouver Titans has had a tougher schedule. Some teams argue that they should be ranked number 1. Honestly, it's so hard to say. And New York Excelsior, they've just looked so dominant versus weaker opponents that we'll just have to wait and see. I like predicting the New York Excelsior because they have so much history of dominating, especially in the regular season. And so that's why I put them at number 1. Meanwhile, Vancouver Titans, we'll see if they actually beat the New York Excelsior. But essentially summing up my number 1 versus number 2, if the New York Excelsior slips up versus the San Francisco Shock, of course Vancouver Titans is the number 1 team in the league. I don't really have strong opinions on either for who should be number 1 and who should be number 2. We'll just have to wait for more results and see. Paris Eternal, if they figure their shit out, if they don't have an off day, they looked super tilted versus the Atlanta Reign in week 3. And so I do believe that they are better than that. Whenever I recall that game, I say that Paris Eternal, they lost that game. Atlanta Reign didn't win it. And so if they can actually come up and show up on Friday versus the Vancouver Titans, we might start to rate this team again. We might start to think that, okay, hold up, maybe Paris Eternal is a top 5 team in the league. But for now, I think I ranked them at like number 8 or something, and they'll just have to prove to us first that they are a top team. Because I've said so many times that until Paris Eternal show us the proper results, I'm not going to rank them in my top 5 because they haven't proven anything. And I'm not going to speculate that because they're from Europe, they're supposedly one of the best triple tank, triple support teams. Prove it. Prove it in the best Overwatch League before I actually give you credit for something. That's my thoughts on that. We got the New York Excelsior versus the San Francisco Shock, which I'll talk about more later. Dallas Fuel in a rematch against the Shanghai Dragons. Now, a lot of interesting takes on this one. Either Shanghai Dragons learn from their mistakes and they just come out of the games and 3-1 or 4-0 Dallas Fuel, or the Dallas Fuel actually keep improving and they take this series pretty decisively. I will say that at times Shanghai Dragons looked a lot better than Dallas Fuel last week, but I'll also say that last week Dallas Fuel looked a lot better than Shanghai Dragons. So this is a really hard matchup to call in my opinion. And it will come down a lot to the different strategies and compositions we'll see. Quite honestly, I don't have a lot of insight into this matchup. I don't really know. It could go either way, and I just like to see either team win this match like dominantly, because that will tell us more about where these teams sort of um, are ranked like properly. If this ends up being another game 5, I'll end up putting Dallas Fuel at like number 9 or number 10 in my power rankings. Like if you go to another game 5 against the Shanghai Dragons, then sure, they're going down in my power rankings. If Shanghai Dragons wins this like 3-1, 4-0, I could certainly put them at number 10 next week in my power rankings. So this matchup has a lot of complications, and I don't lean necessarily either way. I think these are both teams that sort of started out rough this year, and they're both improving. And so I'm hoping that either of these teams just dominate and go 4-0 in this match. Otherwise, they're both going to end up being average teams with us not having a lot of knowledge about how good they actually are. Moving on to Saturday, March 10th. No, this is 9th. God damn it. Saturday, March 10th. Okay, we got the Los Angeles Valiant taking on the Houston Outlaws. Dreadful matchup. I feel like I have a lot of Houston or Valiant fans listening to my podcasts. So, I mean, I should spend more time talking about your teams. But quite honestly, I'm not really keen. I did talk about Valiant last episode, and I did talk about the Outlaws at the start of this one. So I hope you enjoyed your time in the spotlight. But for now, I'm going to skip this game. I'm sorry. I don't want to be here all night. Seoul Dynasty takes on the Washington Justice. A bit of a revenge matchup for Guido. I don't know if he actually has revenge to deal against the Seoul Dynasty. But Guido on the Washington Justice facing his former team in Seoul Dynasty. Obviously, Seoul Dynasty is going to win this game. Um, I mean, I go like 90 to 10 odds or whatever. But it will be interesting nonetheless to see Guido in that game with Seoul Dynasty. I'm hoping to see some nice handshakes or something, some spice maybe. If Guido just walked down on the stage and was like, Ri Jong, I'm gonna fuck you up, that'd be great. Please do that. Because then I won't be the only one who have actually cursed on the Overwatch League. Guangzhou Charge takes on the Los Angeles Gladiators. This could be a really good matchup, or it could be a really shitty one because Guangzhou Charge look really good. And I rated them at my top 5 in my power rankings because I thoroughly believe that this is a team that has tons of individual skill. Happy on the Widowmaker, also a decent Zarya. Shu, of course, on the Ana and Senyara. Everyone is on the Shu train as it stands. I think I hyped them up. If you go back to my very first podcast, I do think that I hyped up Guangzhou Charge. So I'm quite happy how that came through. Shout out to Hexagrams. Hexagram Hexagrams was actually the first alt talent I heard that properly hyped this team up. So all credit to Hexagrams because he was early on calling Guangzhou Charge strong, and he's been hyping up Happy since I was about 5 years old. So credit to Hexagrams. Good call on that one, buddy. Taking on the Los Angeles Gladiators, and this matchup could go either way. I mean, I've been calling for Surefour to bring out this Sombra for like ever because it worked for Dallas Fuel. Could work here. But then again, DK is playing, and Surefour isn't getting any playtime. So who knows? Hangzhou Spark takes on the Toronto Defiant, two mid-table teams fighting against each other. And at this point, we're just looking at Hangzhou Spark to bring out more Gushui, because the Gushui played all 4 maps last week against the LA Gladiators. And so we're just hoping that Hangzhou Spark finds some sort of consistency against the Toronto Defiant this week. And so if the Hangzhou Spark beat Defiant, I'm more than happy to put Hangzhou back in my power rankings top 10. But as of now, they've just been so inconsistent, and so I'm not really willing to put them there. Especially the eye test, like the Hangzhou Spark eye test is like power rank number 15. God damn, they're awful. And so if they actually put up a good show against the Toronto Defiant, we might see them climb back into the top 10. As I said, look out for Gushui on the Hangzhou Spark. I'm hoping he plays all 4 maps because if he becomes a consistent starter, that will be so much better for this team, in my opinion. And everyone loves some Gushui. Sunday, March 10th, we got the Paris Eternal taking on the San Francisco Shock. Again, this could be a really good matchup. It could be Cruz versus Moth, who are both two amazing Lucios. It could be Soon versus Sinatra. No, that's not really appetizing. Soon has been underperforming on Soria for a bit, so uh, I don't know. It could be a really good matchup because San Francisco Shock, they haven't played that much anti-goats. I believe we've seen Striker on Widowmaker versus the Vancouver or something like that. But overall, San Francisco, they prefer to play a triple tank, triple support. And so this is just another chance, realistically, for Paris Eternal to really show that they are as strong as people say they are on triple tank, triple support. But if SF Shock 4-0's Paris Eternal, kiss yourselves goodbye in my power ranking top 10. Because I can't be arsed with your shit anymore. Okay, prove that you belong there. The London Spitfire takes on the Shanghai Dragons. This is a game for the London Spitfire, in my opinion, to prove that they are a force to be reckoned with as well. They started out horribly. They looked awful. Holy shit, that Washington Justice game was dreadful. And so since they put on Profit on the Zarya, they have looked better. Guard is a decent brig as well. Gesture, he plays Winston. So this is a chance for the London Spitfires. If they 3-1 or 4-0 Shanghai Dragons, I could see them make my number 8 spot in my power rankings, maybe climb a bit further as well. So this is a game where I'm looking out for London Spitfire to gain some consistency as well, and maybe they can regain some of their former glory and start showing the world again that they are a top team to be reckoned with. Because realistically, they should, right? You got Bedosian, Prophet, Fury, and then Jester should be good, but he just doesn't have a Reinhardt. It just doesn't exist. And Guard, yeah, he has been before me as well. So this is a team that should be top tier, but they need to beat Shanghai Dragons convincingly, in my opinion, if they're going to rise further in my power ranking. So look forward to that matchup. Could be good. Could be good. Florida Mayhem takes on the Boston Uprising. That was pretty funny. I had a Florida Mayhem fan tweet at me that I'm an idiot for not predicting Florida Mayhem 4-0. Love the loyalty to your team, brother. We'll see how that turns out. Vancouver Talons takes on the Chengdu Hunters, and this is going to be a stomp. So, good night. Great job, everyone. Round of applause. Great, great schedule we got there this week. So, let's talk about our match of the week. I was kind of half-assed. Match of the week. Oh, that works. Sure, that works. Yes. New York Excelsior takes on the San Francisco Shock. I didn't forget about this one, did I? No, I was going to come back to it and give my proper analysis on the New York Excelsior versus San Francisco Shock. So this matchup is going to be one hell of a game. Okay. And me and Sideshow, we were on his stream, we talked about it. Both very much looking forward to this one. And actually, the maps as well for this one is going to be a banger. Now, regretfully, I haven't really brought up the maps, so I have to press around on my laptop and I have to go to match details on overwatchleague.com to bring up the match details to show you the maps. So the first map is going to be Busan. Everyone loves Busan. Going to be great. Then we move on to Numbani. Numbani, which New York Excelsior got full held on. Okay, they got full held on Numbani against the Seoul Dynasty. So, do we expect New York Excelsior to beat San Francisco Shock on Numbani? No. No, we do not. So, again, Busan, if that goes the ways of New York Excelsior, pretty cool. Numbani goes the way of San Francisco Shock. Okay, we got a series on our hands. Volska Industries. Sideshow Overwatch brought up to me that the New York Excelsior, when they played, who did they play? There was a pretty garbage team, I recall, in stage 1, week 2. They played the Los Angeles Valiant. Watch it, match details. Yes, they got full held by the Los Angeles Valiant on Volska Industries in week 2. And so, New York Excelsior, they've been full held on Numbani, they've been full held on Volska Industries, and God forbid San Francisco Shock wins Volska Industries and Numbani, and suddenly this is a series because the San Francisco Shock will be up 2-1. And then we have Dorado, and we might even go to map 5. And so this series could be legit insane. It could be redonkulous, my dudes. Could be absolutely insane. So really much looking forward to this matchup this week. It could be purely amazing. Nene versus Sinatra, two of the best Saryas in the league, extremely high damage output. Don't quote me on this. I think both of them are top 2 or top 3 in hero damage done and final bows on Zarya. It's probably not like that. Ben Troutman, our stats guy, is going to go crazy because I just say a bunch of weird, um, incorrect stats on my podcast. But anyway, they're both insane. Okay, you get my point. Two insane Saurus. Jonak versus Violet, two of the deadliest Zenyatas in the league. Violet, bit suicidal. He likes to go in the front line and always die and get picked off. He gets picked off pretty much all the time. While Jonak, he does his thing. Still, great Zenyatta matchup duel. Super versus Mono, not as excited about that one. I think Mono is the best main tank in the league. People rave about Bumper, but Mono is so inconsistent. Mono is so consistent, rather, not inconsistent. He's so consistent with all these ultimate combos that honestly, I think Mono looks better overall. He might not have as an aggressive Winston, but that's also not as flashy. And so, sure, I can appreciate Bumper's aggressive Winston. He gets a lot of flashy kills, a lot of impact, but Mono does his job on the Winston, and so I'm not going to underrate him because of that. And what else do we have here? Is there any other matchups? No, I mean San Francisco Shock, they just rotate all of their DPS all the time. So yeah, I don't want to spend too much time on that. Anyway, you get my point. This will be an incredible matchup, and it might determine a lot of power ranking stuff moving forward. If the San Francisco Shock win this one, heck, New York Excelsior, they could fall to like number 3 or God forbid even number 4 in my power ranking. So this could be an insane game with a lot of implications in a lot of people's power rankings and stage playoff predictions. So insane game coming up on Friday. Make sure to tune into that one. That is at 7 p.m. Yeah, 7 p.m. Pacific. So that's 10 p.m. Eastern. And if you live in Europe, well, good luck. I think it's at like 4 a.m. in the morning. Great stuff. Fantastic. Good luck. Anyway, moving on to our Q&A questions with hashtag Ask Reinforce. If you have any questions to me, make sure to tweet at me with the hashtag AskReinforce and ask your questions, and you can have a chance to be mentioned and have your question answered on this podcast. Every Wednesday, I answer my questions, or not all of them, but some of them. And it's not really Wednesdays because I recorded at 10 p.m. on a Wednesday. Well, I guess it's going to be Tuesday for you guys. Anyway, you get my point. Let's just do the questions. Let's just do the questions. Let's just do the questions already. Why am I babbling so much? I mean, I guess it's a podcast. Anyway, from Samarth Harry. Samarth Hari. Hey, Reinforce. Any plans on having guests on the podcast? I'd love someone with a different so that you. I think you accidentally a word, Samarth. I'd love someone with a different opinion. I'm going to put opinion in the sentence. With a different opinion so that you and the guest can have some discussion. For example, Sideshow thinks Gestures Run is good, while you shit on him. Yes, I do have plans to bring guests onto this podcast, but I do like being consistent with my podcast. And if I do and produce and I record my podcast whenever I want, and I'm consistent with it, I sort of like doing that. I was always the guy in school who went to a group project and ended up doing 80% of the group project because I just liked working by myself. So I can sort of apply that concept to this podcast where I just like doing the podcast and get it done my way, my time with my planning. But yeah, I mean, I'd love to bring someone on. Maybe I've talked about Matt because we live in the same building. He can just come downstairs to my apartment, join me in my closet, and we can just talk about some games. So at some point, yeah, I haven't really gone through the effort of setting up, say, Discord or something on my PC, but that could be something for the future, especially if this podcast are popping off, because then we actually need more opinions than my own. From Jonah Feldman, any pros you think will transition particularly well to playing Baptiste in stage 2? Kariv, hitscan DPS and support experience, and Jake, maybe based on Brig and Junk experience, comes to mind. Well, first of all, we don't even know if Baptiste is going to be in stage 2 or not. As far as I know, he's just on the PTR. So we'll have to see. But whenever Baptiste comes, if that's stage 3 or whatever, we can speculate. So the way I look at it, Baptiste is sort of like a defensive Ana, where you don't have a lot of offensive playmaking, but you have a lot of defensive playmaking with your immortality field and your healing. And you still have some of that damage coming in from your rifle. It's like tied with Zenyatta for damage output or something. And so I'm looking at players that are good with Ana, um, because I think they have a lot better understanding of the defensive capabilities. If you think of it like this, a lot of DPS players who might play Brig or etc., they will have learned the healing aspect of playing the game. They will have learned the support aspect of playing the game. But I don't think that defensive support kind of way of thinking has really clicked for a lot of those players yet. And so I think that Zenyatta players or Lucio players, they have like a thing in their brain which is like, now's the time to hit sound barrier, now's the time to hit transcendence. And similarly, I think they'll have way better judgment when it comes to using immortality field, for example, or even the heal, because supports obviously in Overwatch, they like to maximize every ability, and so maximizing your heal is not about just pressing your heal randomly. It's about actually timing it perfectly so you get the most amount of healing output. So I'm looking at good Ana players, and I mean Jonak just comes to mind. He's going to be insane at it. Apart from that, I mean, you mentioned DPS, so I could go down the list of mentioning all of the Ana players, but that's just going to take a lot of time. Do I even want to give you like a rundown of all these players? It's going to be so hard to think about all of these players because I just don't have like a database of players in my head that I can just rant off. I mean, sure, yeah, Kareev could be good. Sure, Jake could be good. Those are the kind of DPS players that have experience sort of playing some supportive characters and are good in that sense. A lot of these players in Overwatch League, they're like jack of all trades. We've seen like Libero, Tvic, EQO. They're all sort of jack of all trades. So I think they'll do better than most other people. If you're a Brig, if you're a very if you're a really good, okay, let me put it this way. Some Brig players are really aggressive. They're really aggressive Brig players. Usually, if you're a super aggressive Brig player, you might not, I'm generalizing here, you might not transition to Baptiste as well as someone who plays a flawless defensive Brig that gets a lot of healing output. So if you're a defensive Brig or you're an Ana player, I expect you to do well on Baptiste whenever he comes into the Overwatch League. Webs, do you think Soul, Sebs underscore OW, do you think Soul is not enabling Fisher well, or is he just washed up this season? He has not had the impact I expected him to have compared to Gladiators last year, especially considering he's speaking his native language now. I do think that he has had some troubles getting proper support in this team. I do think early on Fleta struggled with his Zarya barriers, and I've mentioned it multiple times on this podcast that Fleta looked awful with his Zarya barriers early on. I haven't really analyzed any of Soul Dynasty's games as of recent, but I don't think that changes over time. It probably has gotten a lot better. I think that Fisher himself maybe has gotten better in GOATs because Fisher used to be a really aggressive Reinhardt, and quite honestly, aggressive works. We've seen aggression work for a lot of teams, but you sort of have to understand the timing in your head when to engage with triple tank, triple support. And so, sure, Fisher himself might not perform up to his season one standards, but I think it's a bit of both. I think that his team might not have supported him as well going into this Soul Dynasty team, but also Fisher might not have adjusted as well to the triple tank, triple support. And that's not saying he's a bad Reinhardt, because you don't, even if you're a good even if you're a good Reinhardt, you don't instantly become good in triple tank, triple support. It's a different mindset of playing with all these tank characters and all of these triple support characters, and so there's a different mindset, as you sort of have to get that experience and knowledge in playing in this meta before you can properly execute. And I think that for a lot of these Overwatch League Korean teams, like say the London Spitfire or the Seoul Dynasty, they just haven't had that knowledge available to them in the right way. I think there's a lot of players on Dallas Fuel that I mentioned, for example, that a lot of players on the Dallas Fuel roster haven't had great experience with triple tank, triple support, and so they're lackluster as such. And I think that goes for Seoul Dynasty. I think it goes for London Spitfire. And so Fisher might not have had the best knowledge available to him in adjusting for a triple tank, triple support meta. And so it could just be that he's sort of underperforming because he doesn't have the same level of understanding as some of the other Reinhardts, say like Ben Best, to give an example. And so it might be a bit of Fischer, it might be a bit of the team, um, or not might. It is a bit of both. It is a bit of both. It's not even a question. It is a bit of both. From Kada 5H, do you think that this stage is an accurate representation of where each team stands in the rankings? Or is this meta too unpredictable and chaotic to tell? Especially with teams like Valiant who haven't played badly but seem to lose on those last team fights. Well, first of all, I'm sorry to break this to you, Kala 5H, but the Valiant, they look pretty ass. And there's a lot of players underperforming on that team. They are quite ass. I'm sorry. For the rest of the teams, I do think it is a fairly inaccurate representation because triple tank, especially a lot of Reinhardt, is just something we haven't seen in the Overwatch League meta for a long time. Most of the main tanks in the Overwatch League, most of the main tanks, I'd argue, I'm just throwing this out there, haven't spent any thought on it. I'd say like 75-80% of main tanks in the Overwatch League made themselves famous for having great Winstons in the past. And so a lot of these players are sort of learning Reinhardt as we go in this triple tank, triple support meta, or just started trying to become a top tier Rein within the past half a year. This means that a lot of teams who might excel at dive because they have an incredibly Winston player are going to might underperform in a Reinhardt meta because they just aren't as used on playing Winston or they aren't as used to playing Reinhardt. And so I think this is a bit of a case of a Mercy stage one we had last year where it was honestly bonkers in stage one. Not as bad, but I do think it has a bit of an impact. London Spitfire, they should be owning. They should not be an average team. I think that Hangzhou Spark is going to be become amazing, as well as the Gladiators are going to become amazing if we start going back to a normal dive meta. Now, we'll have to see what the meta ends up being for the future, but a lot of teams are just relying on their Winston being amazing, and that sort of makes me want to feel like this GOATS meta or whatever will be a bit misleading. Having seen the PTR changes, I mean, Junkrat dealing so much damage, as well as the Lucio speed boost changes. If we get this patch for stage 2, we might not even see more Winston play, honestly. We might see more Orisa kind of play, and then fuck knows which teams will excel, honestly. And so I don't know how accurate this meta will be because we don't know what the future metas is. Now, when I actually think of it, I don't know what the future metas will be, and so I can't tell you if it is an accurate representation. I would have assumed that the general accurate representation is like the baseline. So let's say the baseline would have been if you're good at Winston compositions and you have some decent dive players or decent mechanical hit scan players, then I consider you a pretty good team. But as it stands, there's a lot of teams that are pretty questionable on their Reinhardt compositions that could just climb in the standings if we get back to a dive meta. Now, we'll see what meta it ends up being, but I do think that this stage is a bit favored towards teams that have better Reins, but not necessarily have the best Winstons. But that's just me saying that now, not even knowing how much Winston we'll see moving forward. But last season, the baseline was certainly if you have a good Winston, that's going to benefit you a lot more than having a good Reinhardt. But we'll see. We'll see what the metas are. We'll see. We'll see. So those are my questions for this week of the Q&A. Remember, if you want to ask a question, make sure to tweet at me at Reinforce on Twitter with the hashtag AskReinforce, and you could get your questions answered on my Wednesday pre-show podcast. It's not a show. Is it a show? It's a podcast. Pre-pod pre pre-owl podcast, whatever. It's 10:40 p.m. I need to go to bed. I have work in the morning. What am I doing? What am I doing here? Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this week. If you want to support me, remember to go to my Twitch channel, twitch.tv Is it backslash forward slash? Holy shit, I'm tired. So tired of doing this. Is it called a backslash? Yeah, a backslash. Reinforce. You can donate. Make sure to leave a message in your donation message that you love the podcast and you donated because of the podcast, because that makes me a very happy person. I love doing this podcast, but honestly, seeing so many people care about it and support it makes me even happier. I love that you're here with me for this journey, which is my new podcast that I never thought, that I never envisioned, that I never even, in my slightest in my imagination, thought I'd actually do. And so all the support and love has been amazing. Thank you guys so much. You can also subscribe. Just follow me on Twitter, and I'm very happy. And you continue to listen to the podcast, and that will make me very, 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 very happy. So thank you all for tuning in to this week's pre-owl podcast at Positive Reinforcement, episode 4, 5, 6, whichever it is. You guys get it. Week 4, stage 1, pre something. Good night.